Before we got started, funny story. Ryan and I were talking a little bit about my past with FM 106.3 WHTG, and the band Love in Reverse is doing the theme there, who were a big 106.3 band back in the mid to late 90s. So it's interesting how you just pulled that out. Then it's like, I knew that was you, or one of your friends was saying they knew it was me. That was crazy.
I'm also a clairvoyant.
Yes, see, I'm learning.
Many talents. So.
Yeah, man of many talents. A comedian, minister, wrestler. Wrestling announcer. We can put that on the resume now.
Anything to avoid having a real job. That's basically.
Hey, that's kind of what I do. That's the reason I keep doing what I'm doing. And to me, it's like going, wait a minute, I could somewhat get paid for what I do. I'm in. Right?
What are the bills this month? I better take.
Yeah, that's the one thing you got to worry about.
Yeah.
By the way, Ryan Maher is a comedian. I don't know where this is going to go, so that could be half the fun of this. Thanks for coming
on,
man.
Great to be here, man.
Absolutely.
Great to be here. We've been trying for this for a while.
Yeah,
now.
we have. It took a couple months, but you got a lot of stuff going on, by the way. Congrats. Tuesday night was the debut down at Jenks doing Comedy Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Now, one question I got to ask before you tell me how it went. Steve Trevelise from New Jersey 1015. I didn't know he did some stand-up comedy.
Yeah, so he was actually, even before I think he had that gig with New Jersey 1015, I met him because he actually owned a comedy club down in Cherry Hill.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and, then he had some pop-up rooms here and there, and he was always just one of the nicest guys, most fair guys to work for. I mean, I remember one gig he had at Tavern on the Lake in Hightstown. I don't know if you're familiar with that place.
Yeah, it does ring a bell.
Did a lot of great bands and stuff like that, and they did a comedy night. And of course, it was one of my first headlining experiences, and there was a blizzard. And
no.
I borrowed a car to get there because I was driving a Mustang at the time. I was like, "There's no way I'll die."
Yeah, this is dedication when you realize it's like going, "Look, I have a gig. I'm going to get there, come hell or a blizzard." There you go.
There you go. So I borrowed an SUV. I got there, like 11 people showed up.
Still.
And so he was like, do you want to do the show? And I'm like, yeah. And he actually said to me, he goes, well, if you don't want to do the show, I'll still pay you. Which, I mean, at the time, I didn't realize how special that was. And then you get more experience in the business.
Yeah.
But we did the show for the 11 people. And I've always loved Steve. He'll have me on the air, plug stuff. Great
I
guy.
noticed that. Yeah.
Great
Steve's very loyal to people that he likes.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes his show unique, by the way, on 1015.
Yes. Yeah. It's very good. And I still love talk radio. It's wild to me that with how society evolves with entertainment and everything like that, there are still people that will look forward every night to try to get through to talk on the air, and that's just awesome.
And I think that's because Steve's got such a unique show, though.
Yeah.
It's not really about politics. It is about entertainment. It's about whatever comes to his mind and whoever his guest is. And I respect him so much for making the guest be the star. It's not about Steve. It's about the person who's on the air with him.
And to that point, too, the callers as well. I mean, I when I was on last week, I mean, he was talking about, like, diner memories, the 24-hour diners.
Gotta love that.
And, it makes me feel old because, I just turned 39, but I remember when you could still smoke in the diner.
That's right, exactly.
After leaving Jenks, go to the OB, open 24 hours. Those poor waitresses. I mean, we think about, things nowadays. I'm like, wow, the abuse that they put up with all these drunks. And it was a different time. It was a great time. And so people were calling in, sharing their stories, and it was great. There was one caller in particular who told like such a wild story. I'm like, I can't follow this. So I might as well just go home now.
But that was a nice little treat to have Steve do that and be the debut night, which went really well. So, by the way, let me get the photo up here. Photo number 4, Ming, if you wouldn't mind. So this is happening on Tuesday nights. This is at Jenks in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, on the Jersey Shore. Great lineup of entertainment, by the way. Not only Ryan is the host, but upcoming weeks will include actor Jamie Kennedy.
Yes.
That was a nice little get there. And he's got some interesting connections to the area because he just did a film within the last year with Gary Pastore from Jersey.
Yeah, Gary's a great guy. He's going to be August 2nd. I got Ben Bailey July 19th. This whole thing,
Mr. Cash Cab himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this whole thing started because I used to be associated with a comedy club that was local in the area. And
was it Vinny's? You were
yeah. I wasn't gonna plug him.
Okay, but just to explain where you started. It's
And the owner of that club was my manager, so to speak. And there were some good times along the way, but there were some bad ones. We parted ways, and it got to a point where I would have friends of mine be like, "Well, we liked coming to see you locally."
Right.
I mean, I would do Catch a Rising Star in Princeton. People would come see me there, but it's an hour drive, And I always loved what Rodney Dangerfield used to do with his specials on HBO.
Oh, my God. They were some of the best.
Where he was the host, and he would bring up comedians that he loved, showcase them. And I said, this is great because this is an excuse for me to get to work on new material, throw out some stuff that I know works, do some crowd work, but then I can have other killer comics on the show with me.
Absolutely.
And we started out with 3, summer of 2018. The next year they gave me 6, 2019. Then for 2020 we had 9 scheduled. We all know what happened
there, yeah.
And then last year we did the 9, and I also had a place in LBI that I was doing, and it was just, I felt like it was too much. So I said, this summer, let's do 5.
Okay.
We're going to do it every other week. That was the way the scheduling worked out.
Right.
And I was just really happy with how it went Tuesday night. I was very surprised, because the Jersey Shore got its ass kicked on 4th of July weekend. I mean, every place was mobbed. I'm like, these people are going to have no energy left. Right. But they're like, no, we came out. We want to see a good show. So we had like 112 people. It was cool.
No, absolutely. And I think most of these comedy rooms are like, they're small rooms, but they're the great place to kind of get your chops. Like you said, Rodney really made, I think, those comedy rooms even more killer because he was like putting a spotlight on, Rodney could be selling out a theater. No, he's doing it here and spotlighting young comedians. And as a young comedian, it is about Catch a Rising Star. It's about going to these places and establishing your craft. And it seems like most comedians, and I would imagine your travels, they don't forget that. They never forget these places that really gave them their first leg up.
Yeah, and what you learn in this business, I've been doing it now 16 years almost.
Yeah.
And it's peaks and valleys. And I mean, I think I was very young, dumb, and immature for a lot of that time period. I'll be the first to admit it. You get kind of a big head at times, but then you come crashing back down because I was the youngest comic on the roster at Borgata, and I'm doing, sold out. It was 900 people, 600 of them were comps, but the room was full.
Still, you're in front of 900 people.
Yeah,
exactly.
and you're loving it, and you're going, oh, this is great, I'm on the up. And then the next week, you're doing the Burger Express in Carteret on top of a stolen post office pallet, and you go, oh, shit, that's humbling. So... you just live for the moment now, and you take the gigs, and especially if they pay and the audience is great. I mean, and that I learned during the pandemic too, because when I wasn't going to Florida to work, and I did a show with Brad Trackman in South Jersey. It was in the parking lot of a pool hall.
What was that like?
It was awesome because they had 200 people under a tent, socially distanced.
Right.
They actually brought out a few pool tables. Some people were shooting pool. It was just like. It was like this dystopian, South Jersey thing, and it was great.
It's interesting how creative people were really getting during this time, just to try to, hey, look, we want to be entertained, but how do we do it under the guidance of the social distancing? And everybody that's very creative.
Yeah.
That was really creative.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, I had a blast with it, and, just doing different things, like, just taking Snapchat filters and making characters. And then, putting them out there and then having people, email you, go, hey, my wife just graduated nursing school. She loves when you do Walter the Widower. Can you send her a custom video? I'll give you $50.
Okay. Hey, there you go.
My DoorDash bill's getting pricey. Venmo me that 50, So you learn to appreciate different things. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I mean, you use your talents, you do this, you got a bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah.
So
I think you learn that at stages, you're going to and I understand what you mean. Sometimes your head does get a little big, and then something happens that kind of, hey, here's your reminder that as good as it is here, you will eventually come down here, and you're going to have to work your way up. So try to be humble, try to be kind, and try to be the person that is inside you, and but I think it's a natural reaction because when you're young, like you said, young and dumb, and that the same way, all of a sudden my head went, like, what was I thinking?
Exactly. And you know what you got to realize too, and I think a lot of this came from I call my old manager my John Kreese. There
we go, Cobra Kai, baby.
You learn how to break some old habits, and what you realize is that just because I love comedy, there are people that will come up to me and say the craziest thing. They'll be like, who I love? That's Seinfeld, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, well Jerry's stand-up. They're like, Kramer, and I'm like, oh no, like people don't really know the art form of stand-up the way that we think they do.
Right.
So a lot of times when you're coming up, you would get offered a gig. And you'd kind of like look down on it. You're like, I'm not taking that. I just did the Borgata, or I just did whatever.
Right.
And it's like, no, just perform in front of as many people as you can, as often as you can. And that's how you get new fans. I mean, I have people that have come to shows, and followed me, that they met me at those crappy bar shows. Where they wouldn't turn the Yankee game off and stuff like that. So whatever you can to just build that fan base, you got to do it.
This, I get the feeling, was not in the cards. I want to go back to the very beginning.
Okay.
Wrestling was sort of the thing you wanted.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you were kind of developing as a wrestler?
Well, I was never an actual wrestler, per se. I'd done some comedy matches. I actually hold a pinfall victory over Mickie James, former WWE Women's Champion. So technically, I'm the uncrowned WWE Divas Champion. No, so it's just always been something I've been passionate about. One of my earliest memories was watching wrestling with my grandparents and my uncle, and I just grew up obsessed with it.
Okay, so you're watching during the days when Vince McMahon was actually behind the mic. Yes, it was probably in the New York area, Channel 9.
Yeah,
probably, exactly.
Or on trial for a steroid scandal, but you were too young to really understand what was going on. But yeah, and I was just very passionate about it. And in Brick, New Jersey, where I grew up for the most part after my family moved from North Jersey, Iron Mike Sharp had a pro wrestling school.
Yes, he did. Good man.
And I would literally just my mom would take me to Blockbuster Video, which was attached there, and then I would be like, oh, I want to go watch the wrestlers train. And so I kind of started doing that. And then when I was old enough, I started going to the shows. And when I was 14 years old, I had a major back surgery. I had a spinal disease called kyphosis. Ooh. Similar to scoliosis. Had steel rods fused to my spine. Had a bunch of complications, was paralyzed. One surgery turned into 3. So that's when I realized that the whole wrestling thing probably wasn't in the cards.
No bueno, unfortunately.
I like using that as the excuse. I don't think I had the athletic background, but it's like to say, hey, my dream was crushed. God had other plans. Yes. But I would go to these indie shows, and I would be like, hey, let me set up the ring, let me do this. And then that led to, making the guys laugh back in the locker room. Then I became a manager. And my character was, my gimmick, Ryan Maher Esquire. It was like if Doogie Howser was the 15-year-old MD, I was the 15-year-old lawyer. And for some reason, I was a 15-year-old lawyer that was, not trying to have an actual practice. I was doing shows at Rova Farms in Jackson, managing wrestlers. But yeah, so it just kind of grew, and it was always something that I couldn't escape. I was in high school at Monsignor Donovan. My teacher, Mr. Tarras, one of the greatest men I ever knew. He goes, oh, my son's a pro wrestler, Mr. Motion Mike Tarras. Oh. And I remembered him because I would watch WWE, and I would see him, job to Jeff Jarrett or Crush or whatever.
But still, what are the odds of that happening? I mean, come on.
And that's the theme that you'll realize through this wrestling journey is that, I tried very hard to be a part of it. And then when I would walk away from it, there would always be something that would just pull me back in.
One thing or another.
Yeah. So.
There's 2 things that come to mind. One was a recent stint as a wrestling announcer.
Yeah.
You were doing that on the YouTube channel. ISPW.
Yes. Yeah. Independent Superstars Professional Wrestling.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, is it Tito Santana's the commissioner?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I got such a kick out of finding out. I remember Tito Santana. He always ended up his little speech with, Arriba!
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so going back a little bit, when I was working for Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club, Bob Levy at the time was with The Stern Show. And Iron Sheik had this kind of resurgence because he had some viral videos, and Howard started playing the clips. Right. So then they wanted to do a roast for the Iron Sheik in Monroe, New Jersey at one of the wrestling conventions. Howard went to Levy and his guys and said, well, I don't want you doing this for a third party. You're off. You're not doing it. So at the 11th hour, like a month before, Iron Sheik's manager reached out to me. He's like, can you get me some comedians?
Sure.
So it was myself, Don Jameson, Mike Morse, Jimmy Graham. We did the Iron Sheik roast. And I had a great time because I had so much background in wrestling that even though I was the youngest comic, I knew the most about wrestling.
So you could really play the material that you wanted to play, and it would resonate with not only the wrestlers, but the fans who were there for the Iron Sheik on the roast.
Yeah, and then the next year we did Terry Funk. The following year we did Jim Cornette. And I had noticed a weird trend that a lot of wrestling fans were very sensitive. They didn't get the roast thing. I either had people that loved me or I'd be getting hate mail.
Ooh.
It would be like there would be no in the middle.
Right.
And I kind of just pulled away after that. So now the pandemic hits.
Yeah.
And, I stayed in contact with some of the guys that I'd become friendly with, wrestling guys like Al Snow and, just a bunch of other guys. I always kind of kept my finger on the pulse of what was going on. But Tommy Fierro, who runs ISPW and whatever, he bought a storefront, started the Wrestling Collector store, and he started doing these online auctions.
Right.
Which then led to virtual signings. And he was like, how would you like to be the host? And I was like, all right, great. It's a pandemic. I'm stuck in the house anyway.
Right. So this became sort of a creative outlet, maybe put a few bucks in your pocket, and you kind of went, okay, where's this going to go probably at first? But
and it felt like a home shopping network kind of vibe. It really did.
Yeah.
They'd fly in the talent. I'd have Ted DiBiase, Jake Roberts, Val Venis. I mean, we had so many great guys. They would fly in. We had a hotel up in Wayne, New Jersey. I'd sit with them, and we'd go live on Facebook and Twitch and all that and take PayPal orders for people to get their autograph and hold it up. And it kind of took off into a life of its own. I was getting a lot of feedback that I didn't expect. There were people that saw me at the roasts that didn't like me that now saw me doing this, and they're like, oh, no, we get it now. Like
they start to kind of understand a little bit more and understand you. And
because they were going to like the roast of Terry Funk, and like a lot of the wrestlers didn't know what a roast was. Superstar Billy Graham went up there with an oil painting and was crying.
Oh my!
And then and then the comedians are up there saying, Terry Funk is so old. His first prize for a match was a slave. That was Sean Morton who said that. Like just all these things that were going on. And so if you're watching that as a wrestling fan, you don't understand what a comedy roast is.
Yeah.
I could see now why they were like, man, those guys are jerks.
Right. If they don't understand, it's like you were basically taking what we as kids remember with Dean Martin and those roasts and kind of saying, hey, look, if you ever watch those roasts, they were vicious, but
absolutely.
in a very, they were doing it in a loving way because they all got along. But they knew. Sometimes they did they played that line.
Yeah.
And they would dance the line. They wouldn't try to cross it, but they tried to get to that line as far as they could.
Well, when New Jack recently passed away, and I actually became kind of friendly with New Jack after this, but that night it was very uncomfortable because I went first, and he was a little under the influence, which he admitted to later on. And, of course, there's the famous mass transit incident where he basically almost stabbed the guy to death that was dressed as a bus driver. And I dropped that in the first 30 seconds. Like, I brought that up, I referenced it, and he got pissed. And I'm just like, you know what, I'm already in it, let's go with it.
Right.
And when I went to go sit back down next to him, he got up and walked away. And I'm like, thank God he did, because he could have very easily just stabbed me right there. Like, that's the kind of guy he was.
Yeah.
But when he passed away and all the tributes were rolling in, that video started to, like, surface around again. So, again, one of these things where it's like, I'll least expect it. I'll wake up some days and I'll have 20 emails from wrestling fans. It's crazy.
I'm going to come back to more of the wrestling in a second, but you bring up an interesting point because comedy is always a thing where you really have to go for it to have any kind of success, at least in my opinion. And in 2022, not that I'm trying to get political, but just knowing the landscape and the sensitivity that is going on, do you find it harder to do comedy now than you did in the past, or are you finding it more challenging? What do you think?
I think that you just kind of have to accept society for where it's at.
Okay.
I mean, I used to get very angry about it.
Yeah.
And go, oh, this is bullshit. How could they, censor us? And,
Yeah.
But then I saw Shane Gillis, who I actually had booked for one of the Jenks shows in 2020 that had gotten canceled because of the pandemic. He lost Saturday Night Live over a joke that he had done years prior.
Right.
And then I'm watching the Democratic presidential debate, and they're asking, Joe Biden and Andrew Yang and all these, nominees, candidates rather, what do you think of Shane Gillis? And it just blew my mind. I'm like, this is where we're at as a country, that you're going to ask, one of the future presidents of the United States, like, what do they think about a comedian getting fired from SNL?
Right.
And that's when I realized, like, you know what? If that happened to him from something he said 6 years ago, everybody's fair game.
Yeah.
And now he's got a wonderful career, even though he lost SNL. I mean, I couldn't even get him for Jenks this year.
Wow, like, that says he's doing well.
Yeah. He's like, sorry, I'm going to be in Europe. I'm like, oh, you don't want to do Point Pleasant Beach? What's wrong with you?
How dare you?
So I mean, you got to just not worry about it. You be mindful, know your audience, read the room. I mean, there's some comics that have the mentality, this is my art and this is what I do, and it's very pretentious. No, it's reading the room. It's entertaining the people that paid the money to see you that night.
Does that sometimes, let me give an example. Like, you're going in there, you get a feel for the room within the first 2 minutes. Have you ever on the fly just said, you know what? There's 3 jokes I'm not going to do.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's, and then there's also like just embarrassing moments too. I remember I once did a fundraiser for a group that was raising money for colitis research. Okay. And they wanted it to be like moderately clean, whatever. So I wasn't headlining. I was doing a half hour and I was bringing up the headliner.
Okay.
And I had them in the palm of my hand. I was getting applause breaks, doing so well. And I'm like, are you ready for your headliner? And just as I said that, a man got up and started talking. And without even thinking, I said, yeah, now's a good time to take a shit.
Ooh.
At a colitis fundraiser. So I felt mortified. And I went up to the person who ran it, and I was like, look, I wasn't even thinking. They're like, nah, whatever, who cares? Like, so you can't control every situation or whatever. But no, if you're up there, you know that there's certain things that you can't do some of the time. That happens often.
It's good to know. No, it's interesting to get into the psychology of it, because a lot of people would think it's like there's a lot more going on than just like, oh, I've got this 30 minutes and I'm going to do this. And like you say, sometimes if you do read the room right, it's like going, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But maybe you think about something else on the fly and kind of go, Wow. I don't know where that came from, but fantastic.
Well, this past Tuesday, there were two gentlemen at the show. They were young. They were like in their mid-20s. They were sitting by themselves up against the bar.
Right.
And then right at the front table, my friend Gabby was there with a couple of her girlfriends. So I said, guys, what are you doing? I'm like, there's 3 beautiful women. You should come sit up here. Sure enough, they get up. They come sit down at the table. The kid is wearing a shirt that says Cougar Uber. And I was like, what? So then I just went, well, wait a minute. Actually, no, sit over here. And there was a table of 4 women in their 60s. And that was just like, now that only worked because they got up. I saw the shirt.
Sure,
so I love that. I love that off the cuff experience. I love when people, I mean, people will come up to me all the time and they'll go, oh, I went to a comedy club once 15 years ago and I saw this guy. And then they'll be able to recite his bit to me or tell me what happened. They might not remember the guy's name. Those are the moments I love.
Yeah.
Like when you give somebody something to remember like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Good stuff. Ryan Maher here on the A Game.
Maher.
Sorry.
Right.
Right. It was like every episode I'm mispronouncing somebody.
No.
I think it's
but you know what? I
shtick.
either get Maher, Maher. Nobody ever goes with Maher.
Maher.
Like Bill.
Well, that's the whole thing. I think Bill's got a copyright on Maher. That maybe.
We could be related. My grandfather got around a lot. I don't know.
Interesting.
I'm always finding out about new aunts and uncles. So, true story.
Not only a comedian, and not only a wrestling fanatic, but another little sideline of his. And this photo actually ties into wrestling as well by some reason. Being photo number 1. But this? You, there you are, doing you're the minister with ECW wrestler Billy Wiles. But I think I saw that I cracked up. I'm like going, first off, the wrestler in you is probably, the wrestling fan in you is going, this is cool.
Billy Wiles, Bricktown guy originally, one of the nicest guys. Again, when I was like 16 years old, doing the indie shows, the guys that I really gravitated to the most were him, John Reckner, Balls Mahoney, God rest his soul, and Chris Candido, who
yes.
I mean, I think about those two all the time. They were best of friends. They were kids. Both became wrestling stars. And Billy Wiles, very underrated wrestler in my opinion. He had that Bilvis Wesley gimmick in ECW, and we just hit it off. And he was always so good to me. And I became a wedding officiant 12 years ago as a gift to my friend. I was present when he met his wife. I kind of hooked it up that night. We were in Virginia, and I was like, let's go talk to those girls. And him and the woman that he met fell in love. She wound up moving up here. Rest is history. So they wanted me to officiate their wedding.
So you go online and find a way to do this. Okay.
Excuse me, sir. It's very.
And
I'm a theologian.
How many?
Don't mock my studies.
No, no mocking. There'll be no mocking of the studies because you've done more than one wedding. How many have you done?
I did 2 weekends ago. I think I'm up to 73 now.
73 weddings.
Yeah, and they're all still together.
I did see something online where it's like going, nobody's gotten divorced.
There's one couple that they're always fighting on Facebook, so I always just kind of remind them. I'm like, look, you guys got to keep this together.
Yeah, I got to keep my perfect record intact here. Come on
and
now.
my Goldberg streak,
So does stuff like that, I mean, you not only do that, but you also have driven as an Uber driver.
Yeah.
Does this stuff kind of incorporate, you sit there and say, oh my God, some of this stuff you go, this is going to make for a great comedy.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I had a passenger that I picked up. The mask mandate got lifted in New Jersey 3 days before Memorial Day weekend. Uber still had it intact. My philosophy was, if I'm going to go out on the Memorial Day weekend right after lockdown, and these kids are drinking at these Jersey Shore bars for 12 hours, what am I going to do now at 2 a.m.? I'll put your mask on? So I said, I'm going to have my mask on me. If people get in and they say, I don't want to wear it, I'm going to go, okay. But if I see somebody get in with it on, I'm going to put mine on. No problem.
Fair enough, yeah.
So we do this for like 9-10 months. It's Belmar St. Patrick's Day Parade. I don't need to tell you what that's like.
Oh, you don't?
100,000 people in the streets of Belmar. Every bar, bar A, 3,000 people. DJs packed wall to wall, right? Picked this young girl up. She gets in with the mask on. And I start the ride. She's going to DJ's. And she's in the back seat of my car with a mask. So I said to her, would you like me to put my mask on? And she goes, yes, that would make me more comfortable. I said, okay. So I put the mask on. Bringing her to DJ's. 5 minutes later, she's like, where should I go after DJ's? I was like, how about a psychiatrist's office? Like, how are you going to go? You're going to make me wear a mask in my car, but now I'm bringing you into a bar where there's going to be 3,000 people spilling drinks on you, doing whatever. So yeah, there's always situations. I had a guy break up with his girlfriend in my Uber the other night at 3 a.m.
Oh my God. I think I did read about this.
Yeah, but also, aside from comedy, it gives you perspective, right? Because here I am sitting home, depressed, even though the lockdown's over. I'm like, the gigs aren't coming in as fast as they used to, whatever.
Right.
And then you drive somebody who's a single mother going to work at Quick Check. And then when I end that ride, I see that she paid $26 to get to work. And I'm like, oh, it's going to cost her at least another $26 to get home. Right. You know, maybe I don't have it that bad because she's smiling, she's being pleasant, whatever. So, yeah, I do love doing it. I love the interactions. I mean, I did 76 rides 4th of July weekend. I had maybe 2 assholes. So those are pretty good odds.
No, you're batting real. That's a good batting average right there. No doubt about it. So, Ryan Maher, again, will be doing Jenkinson's all summer long, every other Tuesday. Find it online. Ming, just give him phone number 4 one more time so I can get
thanks,
everybody.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. When you go to Jenks' website, it'll give you a rundown. Again, Ben Bailey from Cash Cab, very funny guy. If you ever watch Cash Cab, you're going to love his show.
Yeah.
And Jamie Kennedy, not only check him out when he's there, but also because I love Gary Pastore. So, Gary, this is a plug for your movie. Last Call is now running on Showtime. So, if you want to see Jamie Kennedy in that experience.
And Gary, I feel bad that I forget because I actually reached out to Gary. I know him through Mike Marino. What was the movie he did with Jeremy Piven recently?
That's the one.
That's the one. Last Call. Very good movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a cute movie. It's a really cute movie.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to take umbrage on is that there was a scene in the movie that was clearly shot in Asbury Park, but you didn't call it Asbury Park. What was that about? Just get that off my chest.
I know the scene that you're talking about. Yeah. Because it's funny. I've met Gary Pastore a number of times over the years, but Mike Marino a couple of years ago had like a little Christmas get together at his house.
Okay.
And Gary was there with his wife and his daughter, and it was a really nice time. And then I'm a Jeremy Piven fan, so I wanted to watch that movie. I had no idea Gary was in it, and then I saw it. I was like, oh wow, and he had a big role too.
Yeah, so. I almost feel like it was like. It could have been utilized a little bit more. And Gary, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. When you watch the movie, you'll understand because his role is pivotal to set up the whole plot. So it almost was like, okay, we needed a little bit more of him to kind of tie it more together. That's my only criticism of the movie.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it.
I did too.
Sorry that I had forgotten the name, but that's cool. Check it out.
Ryan Maher here on the A Game. Okay, we're up to the segment known as Random Shots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd object to this.
Nah.
All right, so okay, thank you, Ming. Pensive bourbon in the house, and I'm like, I gotta stock up again because I had a whole bottle of Redemption.
Anytime I've been here at a shared universe, I've always get at least a complimentary cocktail out of it.
Yeah, it's like a complimentary shot.
Whether it be the PJ Wendell Essential Guy Talk show back in the day. Now
God bless him for that. It's like, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's very, very fresh.
Yes. Right. And to James Caan, by the way, who just passed away. Yeah, we got to do that one for him.
I'll be watching the program later.
Speaking of which, it's a perfect way to go into Random Shots. These questions can be from anywhere. I stalk your social media. Photo number 8, Mang, if you wouldn't mind. You just did post this. Of course, James Caan will always be remembered for his portrayal of Brian Piccolo in Brian's Song.
Yep.
Still my favorite. But what if I told you it wasn't his best performance in a football movie? This is an underrated film. I mean, it was interesting you put the program up there. I mean,
I love that movie.
It is a little bit ahead of its time when you think about it.
Very.
Yeah.
Because now, I mean, that was the movie that when it came out, I was a 10-year-old kid.
Okay.
But I remember, like, all the conversations about it. And people going, oh, that's not what no, that is really what it's like.
Yeah,
and now that we live in the age of information and we've learned so much about what goes on in these, not just football, but, college athletic programs all over the place, like, that movie was pretty spot on. I mean, just all the themes that they touched on. There was, of course, the highway scene, the famous highway scene that they wound up cutting. I think it was like only in theaters for the weekend.
Right.
But yeah, that movie was years and years ahead of its time. And I hope that, if one, fortunate thing comes out of James Caan's passing, maybe some people will give that movie a shot. I think they'll really appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, because everybody's going to remember The Godfather. Everybody's going to remember Misery. I mean, even though Kathy Bates won the Academy Award, Caan deserved it just as much.
Absolutely.
And then you look at one generation will always remember him in Elf.
Yes.
So I mean, there's so many things. He could do drama, he could do comedy. I mean, he was that just an incredible actor.
He was. He really was.
It was just one of those two things came to mind. And I'm like going, oh, I can do this with Ryan because I know with Essential Guy Talk, this is right up your alley too. Also, today, 42 years ago, Airplane, the movie came out. I say that to you as a comedian. What line immediately comes to your head?
Oh, well, I mean, the jive talking. That's
Oh, stewardess, I speak jive.
Yeah, it's what's great about all those Mel Brooks movies when you rewatch them, and during the pandemic, I rewatched most of them. There's always things that you've picked up on watching it now that you didn't the first time. Like there's the scene where in Airplane where they're at the newsstand.
Yes.
And then you just you notice a magazine on the newsstand that, oh my God, I've seen this movie 100 times. I never saw that was there. Like. Just brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Exactly. I'll have a ham on 5 and hold the mayo. But still, it's still the vision that always comes to mind. You say airplane, Lloyd Bridges. I guess I picked the wrong week to give us sniffing glue. Because that's the last thing you expect Lloyd Bridges to be doing, of course.
Just a great movie. I didn't. The anniversary of that today too.
42 years ago that movie came out. Yeah, now we can all feel old. The movie's older than you.
There you go. There you go.
I want to pull a clip up here because it's going to set up my next question. But Ming, if we can go to the video clip. This is Ryan doing his thing for ISPW with the former reality champion Maven, who went from MTV to become a hardcore champion at the WWE. And it's a shame it didn't last longer because you can tell these two had some fun chemistry. But check out the clip from ISPW.
Losing 2 seconds of sleep over Carino? Well, let me answer that question for you. I'm not. I promise you that.
I think you should take it a little more seriously. But, speaking of all the money you're making, put those sunglasses on one more time.
You like
Could
these,
you do that?
You like these? Anything for a fan. Anything for a fan.
Wow, I am handsome. Anyway, we will be back next week for more action on Sunday Night Slam. I'm Ryan Maher.
I'm Maven.
He seems so easy to work with.
Oh, he was. Let me tell you something. The fact that guy is not like a world-class broadcaster, entertainment reporter, something along those lines.
Yeah.
He could do a Mario Lopez type extra, whatever show Mario's on now. He is just such a phenomenal talent, great guy. So, again, Tommy Fierro, I'd already be there doing the virtual signing, and he said to me one week, he goes, I want to do kind of like a primetime wrestling thing. And I loved Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. I think Bobby the Brain Heenan is the greatest performer all around in the history of wrestling.
So you're kind of answering my next question.
Yeah.
Who are the perfect announcer analyst team that you're talking about? Brain and Monsoon, definitely.
Those guys were top notch.
Yeah.
And so, I said I'd love to do something like that. So we would do the 3-hour signings, and then Maven, who now works on Wall Street, would come in right from work, come to Wayne, and we basically had no script. And Tommy would just tell us, listen, you're going to introduce this match.
Yeah.
This is the premise. This was the storyline, and I was for the first time ever in wrestling the babyface, which was a weird adjustment for me. And Maven, who was a heel manager for ISPW, he was doing his thing, and we hit it off. But again, it depends on if you're a professional, you're going to be able to pull stuff out of people that maybe won't. He worked for Home Shopping Network. He had done a bunch of different things, so. He's a phenomenal.
Well, but that explains why he's such a natural at this, because it just seems like there's no hesitation. He really knows how to dive into it, and he comes across as likable but a dick at the same time, which that's a talent. It really is a talent.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy, and when I was at the show where they turned him heel, and it shocked a lot of people because I think he had a little bit of a heel run towards the end of his WWE career, but that was when they were.
But people remember him more as here's the guy who won on MTV. He was the underdog story. He becomes a hardcore champion.
Eliminated the Undertaker in the Royal Rumble,
exactly.
which was huge.
Good stuff.
So he's a great guy, and the thing with Tommy and ISPW, Tommy, he's got a lot on his plate. He's got the wrestling store, he's running the shows, he has signings at his store.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a thrown together thing. I wouldn't say that it's over completely, but it's just people have things on their plate, things going on.
Sure.
And but it's a lot of fun, and I'll work with Maven on anything, man. He's a great guy.
It sounds like it was a blast.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I look at that and I'm going, you get to live your dream. I did it years ago in the Lehigh Valley. I was telling you about this.
Yes.
With the WXW. And here I am on B104 in Allentown. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, we want one of the DJs. What about Rob? I'm like going, wait a minute. I'm going to be a ring announcer?
Yeah.
Mind you, we're in the Little Hilton in Whitehall, Pennsylvania. But they packed the place.
Yeah.
To their credit, they packed it. And they were very professional, very nice people, and took very good care of me. I only did it 3 times, but it was worth it. It was such a you get to live that dream a little bit, kind of like what you're doing as an announcer. It's got to feel like, okay, now I'm get to live the passion outside of comedy. My wrestling passion comes through.
Yeah.
Through ISPW.
And I remember when we were talking about that, and I love that you mentioned WXW because that family. I know WWE markets it now as the Samoan dynasty, or whatever. But Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the biggest celebrity in the world
from that family. Absolutely,
he's from that family.
Yeah.
And I got to have Rikishi and Samu for one of the virtual signings.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. I wound up talking to Rikishi for about 2 hours after we got off the air.
Wow.
And the stories that he told me. About again, that lifestyle and what they live. The Usos, who are now the unified WWE World Tag Team Champions, those are Rikishi's sons.
Right.
And he told the story about being in world-class championship wrestling in Dallas, Texas, getting the call from Jim Barnett, come to WCW, you and your brother, we're going to give you the deal. and they pack up the kids, rent a U-Haul, and drive there. By the time they get there, Jim Barnett's out, Jim Hurd takes over. Who are you guys?
Oh, Jesus.
Well, we're the Samoan SWAT team, the head shrinkers. We're here. Oh, we don't have anything for you. Look, give us 30 days. If you don't think we're viable, let us go.
Home, yeah.
And then they wound up getting contracts. Then WWE called. They went to WWE, and like you hear that.
Yeah.
And you go the drive and the determination. So yeah, it may have been a little Hilton and Whitehall, but that family's they're gonna pack it in.
Yeah,
they know what they're
absolutely.
doing.
No, that's the one thing I got right away from them. They know what the hell they were doing.
Absolutely.
And that says a lot about it. This goes to another part of wrestling, and in a sense, it's a judgment call. But the question is, over the last 10 years, has Billy Corgan made more of an impact as the front man of Smashing Pumpkins, or through his contributions through TNA and now as owner of NWA?
I want to meet Billy Corgan. I want to sit down with him because I love what he's doing with NWA. I think it's so cool. I struck up a little bit of a friendship with Medusa, Alundra Blaze, when we had her for the signing. She's doing some kick-ass work there now as a commentator. Again, I am Billy Corgan. I was never a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. I mean, they have some hits that I enjoy.
Sure.
I actually went and saw them in Asbury a few months ago. It was entertaining. It was good. But when he's on the Howard Stern show and does those interviews, and you hear about his life growing up, and there were a lot of parallels that I experienced where he kind of used wrestling as an escape, and he stayed passionate about it. He's not one of those guys. There's a lot of celebrities that have abused wrestling. They've used it to get their name out there. He respects it. I mean, he was showing up at the ECW arena and getting beat up when he was arguably one of the biggest rock stars in the world.
That's true. At the peak of ECW, which is the late 90s, early 2000s, and that was the peak of Smashing Pumpkins. You're absolutely right.
So I love what he's doing with NWA. I mean, obviously, I think he's more iconic as a rock and roll frontman, but
the reason I posed the question that way is that over the last 10 years, he's released 4 albums with the Smashing Pumpkins, and they really haven't done what they did before. And in a weird way, I feel like what he's done at NWA with getting the show on the YouTube channel and now getting it on one of the cable networks and getting the name, just getting that brand, which had such a history. I thought at first, I was like, is this a joke?
Yeah.
And then you realize that he's passionate about it. To get it as far as he did, I say he's done more for that than he's done his own band.
I've always said, too, that I think wrestling, especially on the independent level, could work best if there was somebody that had money and influence. That show Heels on the Stars Network.
Yes, that's a great show. About
they have their own building. They can run shows out of it whenever they want. They don't have to worry about the overhead, the landlord.
Right.
John Reckner, Balls Mahoney, God rest his soul. Before he died, he said, "You know what I would love to do? I'd love to have a place like the Monster Factory was." He goes, "Except I want it to have 400 seats, and I want there to be dorms for the guys to be able to crash."
That's a great idea.
And I kind of feel like NWA with what Corgan's doing. He's investing the money. He's not expecting a return for a while.
Right.
And that's what you need. I feel like right now there's too many guys that are afraid to take that next step because they're using it to pay their bills. You know? So yeah, I just also too, wrestling's never going to be like it was during the Attitude Era. It's never going to happen. Entertainment has changed too much.
Yeah.
I mean, there were episodes of Monday Night Raw where certain segments had 9 million viewers. WWE and AEW combined in a week aren't drawing 9 million viewers.
Not like they did.
The way that entertainment is with streaming and everything like that, there's a very niche market. So I don't think you're ever going to have it explode the way that it did. What really does explode in the mainstream anymore? Stranger Things?
Right.
I mean, there's very few things that everybody's talking about.
Right.
Oh,
look, when we get a great song by Kate Bush gets rediscovered and it actually becomes her first ever top 5 global smash. How many years later? That's the impact of a show.
Yeah.
When it can create that. And like you said, it's rare.
And like when in the 90s, we used to see you knew something was big when McDonald's got behind it, right?
Right. Exactly.
There's Jurassic Park on every cup. It's like you don't really see much of that anymore because everybody has their own little niche of entertainment that they're passionate about.
Well, let me throw you this curveball because I just thought of this as we're talking about this. Then in that case, does Chris Jericho and Fozzy become as big as they are with him not wrestling? Is that sort of the catalyst? But don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Love the music. He's got something. He definitely I'm surprised how good he is. I'm surprised how good the band is. And it may have started out as a joke. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if he doesn't have that platform, there's no way Fozzy ever gets to the point that he's at.
I agree with you, and I also give Chris Jericho credit as one of the greatest of all time because I remember him as Lionheart Chris Jericho in ECW when he just would come out as the white meat babyface. Yeah, baby, like that cheesy fire.
Right, and then the thing that made him ladies and gentlemen, Raw is Jericho!
Yeah, and so I love that like obnoxious heel run that he had.
Yes.
But he was the first guy. In my opinion, Chris Jericho was the first pro wrestling influencer, if you really think about it. The way that he would constantly change. He saw No Country for Old Men and was so moved by Javier Bardem. He's like, I'm going to do that for the next year. I'm going to be that guy. And, and then, the rock and roll guy. So he's constantly reinventing himself, which now you see all the time. We're seeing it with Becky Lynch now, We're seeing, but Jericho was the first guy that you really noticed, like, okay, it's not a full-blown gimmick change. He's not coming out as Mantar, but you know what? He's not the same guy that used to come out and call Rikishi Rakachichi and all that stuff. So, but again, anytime you can come out to a ring and have the theme song that you sung being sang by 30,000 people.
Exactly. When Judas comes on, you're just like going, and it's such a great song.
Yeah, you're doing something right.
Yeah, amen to that. I'll stick with wrestling for a little longer. Most underrated wrestler, current or past?
Oh, man, there's so many.
I know.
Brian Pillman.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, Brian Pillman, I think, was the first guy that I can think of that really started to like blur the lines. And
then there was the injuries and all the personal crap, and it's sort of like if it in a weird way, anything that could have derailed him did derail him, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he could have been a great, commentator or whatever. He could have been like the next Jesse Ventura, I think, where, I wasn't alive when Jesse Ventura was wrestling, but I remember him as a commentator.
Sure, we are.
And as a governor in Whack Job. So we had him for the 80s Wrestling Con, May 7th.
Right.
And I was like really excited and nervous, because I was like,
sure, because you've probably seen a few of the movies he's been in, too.
Oh, yeah, and you want to talk about a character, right? So he arrives at the building, and I go up to him, and I go, hello, Governor. My name's Ryan Maher. I'm a big fan. Anything you need today. And I go to shake his hand, and he goes, "Oh no, I don't shake hands. I only do the fist pound. The last time I shook a man's hand, I became deathly ill." And I was like, "Oh, all right." So
that is scary. Such a good impersonation. You got the voice down. That's scary.
But then the best part was like, I watched him do that 300 times in a row. Geez. Like, oh no, just the fist pound. And then one guy goes, Governor Ventura, because he was a Navy SEAL. Exactly. Thank you for your service. And he's like, oh, why are you thanking me? I did it for the money. I got a whole $67. I was a frogman. And then my favorite part, when it's all said and done, he had a line. There were hundreds of people that came to see him. Right. He had an N95 mask. He takes it off, and he's like, I want to see some of the boys. And so he walks up to Tito Santana, and he's just such an intense, imposing guy, Jesse,
Sure.
So he goes up to him, he's like, Tito, how the hell are you? And Tito's like, oh, hi, Jesse. And he's like, remember when I used to call you Chico on the air? Now I'd be in jail. True. And then he would just start telling these stories like, I've pretty much eliminated my entire carbon footprint. I have a Tesla, and it's faster than my Porsche 911. In fact, it smokes it. And everyone's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But what a character.
Yeah.
And then you just think about the accomplishments. This was a guy who was a wrestler, had blood clots in his lungs, had to retire, becomes a commentator. The first bad guy commentator, really. Becomes a movie star. Yeah. Becomes governor of Minnesota. It's fascinating. It really is.
I want to throw in a prop, and I'm not even kissing ass, even though I got to interview her, but the more I learn about Trinity, Stephanie Finaccio, and what she did in NWA wrestling the guys, and some of the moonsaults off the cage, I'm sitting there going, how the hell did she do this? I think in a sense, she was in a sense ahead of her time because we weren't seeing some of the cross-pollination, like a better term, women wrestling men and stuff. It's definitely more in the mainstream now.
Yeah.
But back when she was doing it, in the early 2000s, it was like, no. But she explained when she was on my podcast, there wasn't a women's division in NWA.
No.
So she was a manager, but she's also wrestling. And some of the moves she did, you just okay. Hats off.
China was really the pioneer of that.
Yes.
Of course. And I am a huge fan of Tessa Blanchard.
Okay.
When you have Tully Blanchard as your biological father and Magnum TA as your stepdad, you're going to be good at this.
Yes, that's a good point.
And, I don't know exactly the particulars, but I thought for sure they were going to have her have a WWE run because I just thought that would have been a natural fit, Charlotte Flair versus Tessa Blanchard.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could have Tully in Tessa's corner, Rick in Charlotte's corner. I just thought that would have been money. But, no, these girls are phenomenal. I think Becky Lynch is literally the biggest star in the company, above Roman. Yeah. Bianca Belair, she's the ultimate baby face. Like she's like the female equivalent to John Cena in so many ways. I mean, so the women are really, really kicking ass right now.
Yeah, no, it's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Really good thing. Shift back to comedy for a second. Same kind of question. Most underrated comedian, current or past, that comes to your mind? And no, another tough question to pinpoint, but...
I don't know. It's tough because, again, it's peaks and valleys, right?
Right,
so, like,
exactly. Going back to what you were
you
saying
know,
before.
I had the privilege of opening for Andrew Dice Clay early on. And it's like, you know, when you go home and you think about it and you're like, yeah, this is huge for me. But, you know, like this guy used to do Madison Square Garden.
Right.
And now we just did like 200. Like, so I just think you got to roll with the punches. And there's certain guys that never got their due. You know, look, that's how the business is. And you have this conversation with other comedians. There's guys that I feel I can blow off the stage that have Netflix specials. But then there's guys that I think blow me off the stage that haven't gotten to do some of the cool stuff I've done. So that's a really hard question. I do know that there are certain guys, like I opened for Tom Segura years ago without knowing who he was.
Right.
It was at a comedy club in Long Island called McGuire's. I had no idea who this guy was. And I opened for him and I saw him go up 4 shows and it was probably the hardest I've ever laughed at a comedy club. And I was like, and I remember saying like, why isn't this guy a big deal? And then within 2-3 years, you know, he just became a huge deal. So
right. It's timing being
sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's very rare that you see somebody who's got that it factor that doesn't make it.
Yeah, the only person that really came to mind, and I think it was because he left us too soon, was somebody like Richard Jeni.
Yeah.
Who really, I mean, some of his specials, you just go from top to bottom, and I'm like going, hey, it's the regular cooking guy show. And then like, that just the one, he would if you get a chance to find this, and he like, hey, we got this listener mail, and he's like going off on this whole thing, and all of a sudden he goes, so my question is, after like 5 minutes, how do you think the Ravens are going to do this season? I'm like, it's like, says it all. Oh, wait a minute. I hear a noise in the other room.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a boy. Anyway.
Yeah. And it's funny, like when people ask underrated too, because I mean, you look at some masters of the craft and everybody, of course, goes right to Dave Chappelle, of course. But like, I look at like a Brian Regan, you know,
who does it clean.
Yeah. And I mean, not only that, he only wants to do comedy. He's turned down sitcoms and
I did not realize
that.
Like
he wants to just be a comedian and he's one of the best in the world. So it's like, I could say most comedy fans know who he is.
No, but I would say in that sense, you're right. That would make him underrated because in a sense, he's like, he wants his one pocket. He could be bigger, but he chooses not to, wow.
Yeah. I mean, Norm Macdonald, God rest his soul. I mean, this has been a tough year. We lost Norm, Bob Saget, Louis Anderson, Gilbert
Gottfried,
all in a year. But Norm's another example. I mean, you want to talk fearless. Patrice O'Neill, who I had the privilege of opening for when I did not deserve that spot. I mean, these were guys that really... kind of like the last bastion of the outlaws in comedy, because they were not in it to become rich and famous per se. They were in it because I think in a lot of ways it was the only thing they could do, and they did it so well. I mean, Norm Macdonald has the Weekend Update chair on SNL, and they tell him, stop doing O.J. Simpson jokes. And then he goes on and his murder is now legal in California. Like, I mean, that takes a certain amount of gumption. And then I put myself in that position, and I go, would I have had the courage to do that?
That's a good question.
I'd like to think I would.
But you don't know, because you've never been in that situation.
No. And if I'm cashing checks, you know, where I'm making, you know, $1.3 million a year.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to drive Uber when I'm making that money.
See, there you go. Speaking of a guy who's making money, segue into the next random shot segment. We salute my former guest, Tommy Janarone, who we love it from Bar A, the entrepreneur that he is. Would you say the last time you have been out and, let's say, drinking heavily, was he the bad influence of you getting drunk?
Tommy is just an enigma. He's somebody that I really, you know, so funny quick story about him. I first met him briefly when I was 21, just having drinks at Bar A, okay?
Yeah, there you go.
2 years go by, and it was a quick meeting, whatever. I'm opening for Jim Florentine at a comedy club, and he says to me after the show, he's like, you want to go to Bar A? He's like, you're gonna love Tommy Janarone. He's an animal. You're gonna love him. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll go.
Sure, why not?
Tommy and I hit it off. I wind up, my girlfriend at the time, we all wind up back at Tommy's house, party until 6 a.m.
There you go.
And we just hit it off, and he's kind of become like an older brother / mentor type guy. It's a fun mix because, you know, sometimes there have been situations that I've gotten involved in with him where I've taken it too far with the cocktails. But then there's other situations where he's really helped me out with a lot of things and given me advice, gotten me work, made connections for me.
Yeah.
And again, talk about the wrestling thing. We said always pulling me back in.
Right.
I had no idea when I met him that his best friend is Bully Ray, Bubba Ray Dudley. And so now it's like, it's the weirdest thing because, you know, I'm at a party at Tommy Janarone's house and Bubba Ray Dudley's there. And then I got my buddies from the Indies going, what the hell are you doing with Bubba Ray? I'm like, he's friends with the guy who threw the party. Had no connection with wrestling. It was just
one of those weird coincidences. And honestly, that's why Bully came on. And it was Tommy doing that. And to this day, I say, Bully, thank you again. The last thing I expected, though, on that podcast was the two of us actually spending 5 minutes talking about the Young and the Restless. I mean, I was just like, you're sitting there going, mind is now blown. All right, I am here with the 20-plus time tag team champion of the world talking soap operas.
I will tell you one funny story involving them. So this was like 2011 or so. Godsmack, Megadeth, and Disturbed are playing at PNC Arts Center.
Well, I'm not surprised by this lineup that they were there. Come on.
So Tommy says to me, get to my house like 11 a.m. And I'm like, well, the show's at 7 o'clock at night. Like, all right. So get to the house. It's me, him, Bubba, a few other guys. Start drinking. Now, the mistake that I always made was thinking I could keep up with those guys.
No, you can't.
And there were a lot of times I came close. But this was not one of those times. No. So finally, we get to the parking lot at PNC. I want to say like 4:35, but we've been going all day. And now it's 94 degrees. There's actually a picture of Bully holding a bottle of Stolio and like pouring it. And I'm like, I wake up at Bayshore Community Hospital.
Oh, no.
There's blood all over the stretcher. I go, oh, my God, what happened? What happened? They go, well, you pulled your IV out 5 times and said that you were going to the effing show. And I'm like, oh, no. Like, I had to call my buddy Tim Snee, another former Bar A bouncer who's a cop in Old Bridge, because that was the only way they would release me.
Right.
And it was like a very embarrassing situation. But basically, from drinking so much and being dehydrated, I had to, you know, whatever. So I've learned some painful lessons from those guys over the years. But now, what I will say is I've calmed down drastically, and they don't bust my chops about it, which
That's
is nice.
Good. That's
like
good.
Bully Ray turned 50 a few months ago. They had a big 3-day party.
Yeah.
I drove myself there the first night, stayed an hour, I left. The second day I took an Uber, had a few cocktails left.
And then left, yes.
And then the third day we were all hanging by Joe DeVito's pool just relaxing. And actually Tommy said, he's like, you know, I kind of miss the old Ryan that would have been thrown out of here by now. And I was like, all right, leave me alone. But no, they're great guys, man.
Oh, no, I know.
And they've put up with a lot of crap from me over the years.
No, DeVito recently said, it's like, if you want to join us, will you just tell us? I'm like, I wanted an invite, excuse me.
The next time I'm with them all, I will make sure of it, because it's just...
I'm overdue.
It's a lot of ball breaking and fun. And I always tell people... you know, like I just started seeing a girl recently, and she came out with us the one night, and I was like, "Look, I'm just letting you know they are ball breakers."
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
like fair warning.
Yeah, but they're great guys.
Yeah, they are. This sets up my last question, and if you decide not to do this, I will totally understand. But to give a plug to Bully Ray, can I have photo number 7, Ming? Busted Open is on Sirius XM. It is a great show on the Fight Nation channel, which is channel 157. Check it out. It is more than just wrestling going on here. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, who did they have on? Now I'm trying to remember who they had on recently.
They had Billy Corgan on.
Yeah, Billy Corgan on, but they also, it's Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Melissa Joan Hart was
She's
on the show. Huge wrestling fan.
I know, but it was great to have her on. I think they do not only wrestling, but pop culture.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about it. But then there's Dave LaGreca, who I call Dan and have not lived that down ever since. Like I say, I seemingly screw up somebody's name during these podcasts.
Dave's a great guy. He's actually involved with ISPW as well. He's a manager.
See, now this sets it up really good here, because we know that Mr. LaGreca has been in the ring with Thunder Rosa and has gotten his ass kicked in the process, and he still probably has the wilts to prove it. I'm going to put you in the spotlight where all of a sudden it's like, okay, you get to talk smack against LaGreca. Let's say there was a Ryan Maher, Dave LaGreca match. Looking at the camera, what kind of smack would you give LaGreca?
I don't know if I could, because I don't really know a lot about him. I listened to him.
Okay.
What I like about him the most is that he has brought about this new wave of. It used to be a lot of fans would get involved in the business and whatever. He will be the first to admit that he's still just a fan.
Oh, but I think he's the uber fan, and I think as a radio guy, I'm going to say it this way. You almost always have like 3 different characters.
Yeah.
And he's the uber fan. Mm-hmm. You've got the expert. I mean, Bully Ray is almost like the analyst in this whole thing. And you got your uber fan, and then you get the Mark Henrys coming in from time to time.
Who's an awesome guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible
Bring in
guy.
Tommy Dreamer from time to time. But I think these are the 2 key ingredients.
I agree.
And then you bring in everybody else, but it's like everybody's got a good role here. And the one thing when I watch the banter, especially between LaGreca and Bully,
it's
sort of like, okay, LaGreca is going to go off as the fan, and then Bully's going to be, no, I'm going to bring you down to earth.
Yeah.
Let me explain to you from my side of the fence, pal.
Yeah. Perfectly stated. And I think that Dave is having a lot of fun doing some of these indie shows and being the heel, and mixing it up. But that's the thing. I was offered a manager position with ISPW, and I had to politely decline it because I remember the old days of when I was the heel wrestling manager, and I believed in having that payoff at the end. Bobby Heenan, again, going back to him, in my opinion, greatest manager of all time. Jim Cornette close second. They would get their asses kicked because, you waited for that.
Right.
They did everything, and at the end of the program, and I would do that when I was a teenager and in my 20s, and I've broken my wrist.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I have what I think is an undocumented concussion from Balls Mahoney's chair shot, And then I'm saying to myself, now at 39 years old, like I can't see myself having to go to the ER. And then being like, oh, well, what happened? Well, I was having a match with Nikos Rikos, and I can't do that, So I do miss that aspect of it. Listen, now if WWE called and said, "Hey, we're gonna," then I'm But to risk injury at an indie show, and that's no disrespect to any indie shows.
No.
I don't see it being in the cards right now. Plus, the role of the wrestling manager, with the exception of Paul Heyman, is kind of non-existent in a lot of ways. Like they took Rob Echoes, Rob Stone in WWE, great guy, phenomenal wrestler. They made him a manager. So now it's like, the manager role is basically very good wrestlers that they're putting in that position. And I was never a very good wrestler. I was a good comedy match guy. Intergender tag match, stuff like that, running away from a woman. Like that was the kind of stuff I could do. So, yeah, I don't see myself returning to the ring unless, of course, Uncle Vince calls.
Yeah, if Uncle Vince calls and says, there's a six-figure number coming, like, well, then okay.
Yeah, maybe he'll give me a six-figure number and I'll just be like, no, we didn't hook up.
I knew that was coming. No, you had to. That was like going, all right, that was too easy. I like going, here's the softball. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this, because you're probably the perfect person to ask. Is he the only person that's uncancelable?
He might be.
Because
he actually might be.
When I saw that, another article came out last week bringing up a story from 30 years ago, and it just did not get any traction, I was like, what is it with this guy? Is he Teflon? Like, I couldn't imagine having it break that, I had this situation where I had a woman sign a non-disclosure agreement and I paid her off, and then I'm going to go on TV 3 times that week. Right. I haven't been on TV in months, but now, after I step down, I'm going to go on TV. I mean, balls big enough to bowl with.
Yeah, that's pretty much that really sums it up with him.
Yeah.
It is just pretty much like going, dude, whether I agree with you or not, brass kahana.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I'm going to get ready to wrap up. So one more time, photo number 4. So if you're on the Jersey Shore, thank you, Ming, check it out. It's every other Tuesday. Yep. Comedy's back at Jenks, and Jenks is always a great hang. Check out their schedule at Jenks' website. Again, Ben Bailey from Cash Cab is coming. Actor Jamie Kennedy, who's a very funny guy, will be coming. And this is your host for the entire season, Ryan Maher. Hey, man, I'm glad we got to do this.
Dude, it was a lot of fun. Anytime you want to have me come back, we'll come back. And,
we'll definitely do that.
We'll have to definitely get together with Tom and Bully and all that.
Why do I get the feeling I could see Ryan, Janarone, Bully, and I'm just going to sit back and just watch the carnage happen now.
Yeah. No, again, you're going to need a bigger bottle of that, though.
Come to think, I was about to say, if I'm going to have these 3 together, you see this bottle? This would be done in about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
If Bully hasn't drank all day, it may be done in 4.
There you go.
So I'm just putting it in perspective.
Good times.
Good. We called out everybody we needed to call out.
Great stuff, man. I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Hey, by the way, if you like what you're seeing, please like my Facebook page, The A-Game with Rob Akampora. And I got a YouTube channel. Please give me some feedback and do that. And also do the same for Ryan and what he's doing.
Ryan Maher Comedy on Instagram.
There you go.
There you go.
Until next time, I'm Rob Akampora. This is Ryan Maher. We'll take care. Enjoy the rest of your week, man.